I placed my wedding ring on the edge of my mother-in-law's coffee table, right next to the ceramic angel she bought in Savannah the summer Grant, and I got engaged. I did not throw it. I did not slam it down. I set it there the way you set down a receipt after you have verified the total and confirmed it does not add up. Then I turned around. I walked past my husband, who had stopped smirking, past his mother, whose mouth was open but producing no sound for the first time in the 5 years I had known her, past the hallway photo of our wedding day, the one where I am laughing and he is looking at something just off camera that I never thought to ask about until now. I closed the front door behind me without looking back. That was the last time they saw me standing still. Everything that came next, they had to chase. But let me go back, 3 weeks back, to a Tuesday night, to a number so small most people would scroll right past it, $47. I am a forensic accountant. I work at a mid-size firm in Richmond that mostly handles insurance fraud cases and the occasional nasty divorce audit. The pay is fine, not spectacular. The kind of salary where you can afford a decent apartment and a reliable car, but you are still doing mental math in the grocery aisle. I reconcile bank statements the way some people do crossword puzzles, not because anyone asks me to, but because the pattern is satisfying when the numbers line up. And when they do not line up, I notice Grant's spending had always been predictable. Coffee at the same place every morning, $4.75. Gym membership auto-drafted on the 1st, gas every Thursday, because he refused to fill up earlier in the week for reasons he never explained and I stopped asking about. His financial footprint was so consistent I could have drawn it from memory. So when a $47 charge appeared at a restaurant called Maison on the south end of town, a neighborhood Grant claimed he had no reason to visit, ever, because there is nothing down there but overpriced parking, I did not panic. I just pulled the full statement. I was 8 months pregnant. My ankles were swollen. The nursery was half painted, because Grant kept saying he would finish it this weekend. Every weekend. For 6 weekends running. I was eating dinner alone 3 nights a week because he had late client calls, which I had accepted because I am married to a man in software sales, and software sales apparently requires the social calendar of a diplomat. The statement told a different story. The same restaurant, every Thursday for 11 weeks. A boutique hotel on Grove Avenue twice. Both on nights he told me he was at a conference in Raleigh. And flowers. 3 separate charges at a florist on Carey Street. All roses. Which would have been a lovely detail if I were not violently allergic to roses. Grant knew this. He had known it since our second date when he showed up with a dozen long stems. And I spent the evening looking like I had been pepper sprayed. He never bought me flowers after that. He was buying them for someone else. I sat in my car in the firm parking lot for 22 minutes after I found it all. I know it was 22 minutes because I watched the dashboard clock. Counting things is what I do when the world stops making sense. It is a habit, not a coping mechanism. Okay, it is both. I did not call him. I did not drive home and throw the statement in his face. In my line of work, when you find the first sign of fraud, you do not knock on the suspect's door. You pull every record you can access, you build a timeline, and you let the numbers tell you exactly how deep it goes before anyone knows you are looking. So that is what I did. I opened a new folder on my personal laptop and named it Tax Prep 2024. Boring on purpose. Nobody opens a folder called Tax Prep. I remembered something Pat Sweeney told me the week before. Pat is a client, runs a small divorce law firm downtown. Hired us to audit a husband who was hiding assets in cryptocurrency. While I was pulling his blockchain records, she signed off on a report and said, almost to herself, "Honey, the numbers never lie. People do. The trick is knowing which one to believe." I laughed at the time. I thought she was talking about the audit. 3 weeks later, sitting in that parking lot with one hand on my belly and a phone full of receipts, I understood she was talking about everything. I drove home. Grant was on the couch watching basketball. He looked up, How was your day? Fine, I said. The baby kicked a lot today. He smiled and went back to the game. And I went to the bedroom and started counting how many of my things I could move without him noticing. 8 weeks until my due date. 8 weeks to build a case, build a plan, and keep my blood pressure below the number my OB had circled in red on the chart, taped to our refrigerator. The refrigerator he walked past every day without reading a single thing on it. I pulled 3 months of statements that night after Grant fell asleep. He snored the way he always did, flat on his back with one arm thrown over the empty side of the bed like he was saving it for someone. I used to find that endearing. Now I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the blue light reflecting off a belly so round I had to scoot the chair back 2 extra inches. And I let the numbers do what numbers do. They organized themselves into a story. Maison, the restaurant on the South End. $47. Then $52. Then $61. Every Thursday for 11 straight weeks. Which meant this started in early spring, right around the time I hit my second trimester and started showing enough that strangers in the grocery store felt entitled to touch my stomach. The amounts crept up, which told me something. First dates are modest. Recurring charges that increase over time means someone is getting comfortable. The boutique hotel on Grove Avenue appeared twice. Both charges fell on weekends. Grant told me he had a sales conference in Raleigh. I pulled up his company calendar. He had shared it with me 2 years ago. For scheduling purposes, and never thought to revoke access. No conferences in Raleigh. No conferences anywhere. Just 2 Saturdays blocked off as team building with no location attached. Then the flowers. 3 orders from a florist on Carey Street, all long-stem roses. All delivered to an address on Hanover Avenue that I did not recognize. Total floral expenditure over 3 months. $187. He spent more on roses for her than he contributed to the nursery fund, which sat at exactly $400 because every time I mentioned it, he said next paycheck. I made a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, vendor. Column C, amount. Column D, what he told me he was doing that day. The gap between columns C and D was where the marriage lived, and it was widening with every row. Total spending on the affair in 3 months, $2,314.62. I know the exact number, because rounding felt like giving him credit he had not earned. Here is the thing about discovering your husband's affair through financial records. Instead of lipstick on a collar or a text message left open, it is clinical. There is no dramatic moment of walking in on someone. No screaming match. Just rows of data that confirm a hypothesis you did not want to test. The betrayal arrives in spreadsheet format, and you process it the same way, cell by cell, line by line, until the full picture emerges, and you realize the man snoring in the next room has been running a parallel budget you were never meant to see. I closed the laptop at 1:47 in the morning. Went to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, tired, swollen, hair in a knot I had not brushed since Tuesday. And I did not cry. Not because I was strong, because crying would have blurred the numbers, and I was not done reading. The baby shifted. A slow roll under my ribs, the kind that feels like someone rearranging furniture in a room too small for the job. I put both hands on my belly and stood there for a while. I was not thinking about Grant. I was thinking about the fact that in 8 weeks, there would be a person in this world who depended entirely on me. And I could not afford to spend those 8 weeks being destroyed, so I made a decision. Not a dramatic one. Not the kind they put in movies where the heroine throws a vase and delivers a monologue. I decided to be an accountant about it. When you discover fraud in an audit, you do not storm into the CFO's office and start shouting. You document. You verify. You build a case so clean and so airtight that by the time you present it, the only response available is silence. Confrontation without documentation is just noise. And I have never been interested in noise. I went back to the kitchen, opened the laptop again, and created a subfolder inside Tax Prep 2024. I named it Supporting Documents. Then I began screenshotting every receipt, every calendar entry, every charge that did not match the story my husband had been selling me for 11 weeks. The next morning, Grant came into the kitchen while I was eating toast. He kissed the top of my head, poured coffee, and asked if I wanted him to pick up anything for the nursery on his way home. Maybe some curtains, I said. The ones with the little elephants. Got it. Elephant curtains. He left for work. I listened to his car back out of the driveway, and then I sat in the quiet kitchen and finished my toast. He would not buy the curtains. He had not followed through on a single nursery promise in 6 weeks. And we both knew it. Except only one of us knew that we both knew it. That afternoon, I called Pat Sweeney, not for an audit this time, for something else entirely. Pat, I said, I need to ask you something, and it is not about the crypto case. A pause. Pat has the kind of silence that tells you she is already 3 steps ahead. Is it about your husband? I had not told her anything. Not a word. How did you know? Honey, I have been doing this for 31 years. When a woman calls me at 2 in the afternoon with that specific tone in her voice, it is never about cryptocurrency. Another pause. How bad? 3 months of receipts. A restaurant. A hotel. Roses he knows I am allergic to. Do you have documentation? I have a spreadsheet with 4 columns and 63 entries. Pat laughed. Not a cruel laugh. The kind that says I should not be surprised, but I am impressed anyway. Of course you do. Can you come in tomorrow? Not as a client of the firm. As a client of mine. I will be there at 9. Bring the spreadsheet. It is already in my bag. I hung up and sat in my car for a few minutes, watching people walk in and out of the office building like the world had not rearranged itself overnight. My hand found my belly again. The baby was quiet, resting, maybe, or listening. It is going to be okay, I said out loud. To no one, and to someone at the same time. I just need to finish the math. Pat's office smelled like old leather and black coffee, and something faintly floral that turned out to be a candle. She kept on the windowsill because, she said, divorce law requires ambient comfort. She had a framed photo of herself on a boat in what looked like the Florida Keys, grinning with a margarita in one hand and a fishing rod in the other. No photos of any of the 3 husbands. Sit, she said, gesturing to a chair that was more comfortable than anything in my own apartment. Show me what you have. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. The spreadsheet filled the screen, 4 columns, 63 rows. Color-coded by category. Red for the restaurant, blue for the hotel, yellow for the florist. Pat leaned in, reading. Her glasses slid down her nose. She pushed them back without looking up. 63 entries, she said. 63. And he does not know you have any of this. He does not know I have a personal laptop. He thinks I do everything on my work machine. Pat sat back, took off her glasses, looked at me the way she looked at audit reports, not with judgment, but with the kind of focus that means she is already calculating outcomes. How far along? 32 weeks. How do you feel? Like someone who just audited her own marriage and found the books were cooked from the start. She almost smiled. Virginia is an equitable distribution state. That means the court divides assets based on what is fair, not 50-50. Adultery is a factor. With documentation like this, it is a significant factor. She tapped the screen. Hotel charges during nights he claimed to be at a conference. That is not just infidelity. That is financial deception within the marriage. A judge notices that. Pat pulled a legal pad from her drawer and started writing. Her handwriting was terrible. The kind that belongs to someone who thinks faster than they can move a pen. Here is what we do. Step 1. You open a personal checking account at a bank he does not use. Move your direct deposit there. You earn your own salary. He has no claim to future paychecks during separation. Done, I said. I opened one last week. Pat looked up. You opened an account before you came to see me? I am a forensic accountant, Pat. The first thing you do when you suspect fraud is secure the clean assets. This time she did smile. Step 2. Find a place to live. Small is fine. Safe is mandatory. Sign a lease in your name only. Start moving things gradually. A box here. A bag there. Men do not notice what leaves a house. They only notice what arrives. I have been looking at a 1-bedroom in Church Hill. Good neighborhood. Reasonable rent. Close to the hospital for the delivery. She wrote something else. Step 3. We prepare the divorce petition. Grounds. Adultery. We attach the financial documentation as exhibits. I will draft it this week. It sits in my drawer until you say go. And the joint accounts? Step 4. We prepare a motion to freeze joint assets. The moment you are ready, one phone call to me, and I file it. He gets a notification that the account is restricted. And by then, you and your documentation are already somewhere he cannot reach. Pat put the pen down, leaned forward. Now, here is the part that is not in any legal textbook. You have a plan. You have evidence. You have a timeline. But I need you to hear something. She waited until I looked at her directly. The hardest part is not the paperwork. The hardest part is going home tonight and sitting across from him at dinner and pretending. Can you do that? I have been doing it for a week and a half. Good. Keep doing it. Do not tip your hand. Do not pick fights. Do not go cold. Because cold is just as suspicious as angry. Be exactly who you have been, the wife who does not notice, the wife who notices everything but chooses when to show it. Have you ever discovered something about someone you loved that rewrote every memory you had with them? Not just the bad ones, the good ones too. The Sunday mornings making pancakes, the time he held my hair back when I had morning sickness so bad I could not stand, the night he put his ear against my belly and said he could hear the baby's heartbeat, even though that is not medically possible. And we both knew it, but neither of us said anything because the lie was sweeter than the correction. Once you know the truth, you cannot unknow it, and every sweet moment becomes evidence of how long the lie had been running. That evening, I sat in Pat's parking lot and did what I always do. I counted. 7 days since I found the $47 charge, 63 entries in my spreadsheet. 1 apartment I had not yet signed a lease on, 1 baby who kicked every time I ate anything spicy. Like she was already developing opinions. I was about to start the car when my phone buzzed. A text from Grant. Mum called. Dinner Sunday. She wants us there. Says she has someone she wants us to meet. Someone she wants us to meet. I stared at the message for a long time. Then, I opened the spreadsheet on my phone. I had backed it up to the cloud, because redundancy is not paranoia when you are building a case, and I scrolled through the restaurant charges. Maison, every Thursday. The charges were always for 2 people. Always between $40 and $70. Always on a card that auto-generated a receipt to an email address Grant thought I did not have access to, but he had set up the account on our shared computer 3 years ago. And the password was saved in the browser. People underestimate how much a forensic accountant can learn from a saved password and 10 minutes of uninterrupted access. I opened the email, found the Maison receipts, and there it was, on the most recent one, in the reservation name field. A name I had never seen before, Kelsey Morris. I did not know who she was. Not yet, but I typed the name into a notes app and saved it next to Pat's phone number, the apartment listing in Church Hill, and a running tally of every dollar Grant had spent pretending I did not exist. The numbers were still adding up. And I was nowhere near done counting. I became very good at carrying small things. A photo album in my gym bag on Monday. 2 sweaters folded inside a grocery tote on Wednesday. The pearl earrings my grandmother left me, wrapped in a sock and tucked into my purse on Thursday. Every day, something else crossed the invisible line between the house I shared with Grant and the apartment I had signed a lease on. 3 days after meeting Pat, the Church Hill, 1 bedroom. $760 a month, utilities not included. With a window that faced east and a closet so narrow my hangers had to go in sideways. It was small, it smelled like fresh paint and someone else's floor cleaner, but the first time I stood in the empty living room with my hand on my belly and no one else's expectations pressing against my skin, I took a full breath, the kind I had not taken in months without realizing I had been holding it. Grant did not notice the books disappearing from the hallway shelf. He did not notice the winter coats gone from the front closet, or the second set of towels missing from the bathroom cabinet, or the fact that the kitchen drawer now had 3 spatulas instead of 5. He did not notice, because noticing would have required him to look at the house the way I looked at it, as a record of who was present and who was not. I bought a crib from a woman on the neighborhood message board. $60, barely used. Her daughter had outgrown it in 4 months. I assembled it alone on a Tuesday evening, sitting cross-legged on the apartment floor with an Allen wrench and a set of instructions that assumed 2 adults would be doing this together. The diagram showed a smiling couple tightening bolts from opposite sides. I did both sides. It took 40 minutes longer than the instructions estimated, and when I finished, the crib sat in the center of the bedroom like a small wooden promise. I tested it by pressing down on the mattress with both hands. Sturdy. Level. Exactly what it needed to be. That was the night I started researching Kelsey Morris. It did not take long. Social media is a forensic accountant's unaudited ledger. People post everything and verify nothing. Kelsey was 25. Recently graduated with an MBA from a school in Northern Virginia. Currently working at a marketing firm downtown. Her profile was public. Her photos were curated in the way that 25-year-olds curate things, which is to say they revealed far more than she intended. 3 photos at Maison. The same restaurant. The same booth visible in the background, the one by the window with the exposed brick. In each photo, the edge of a man's sleeve was visible across the table. Grant's navy blazer. I recognized the cufflinks. I had given them to him for his 30th birthday, but the detail that stopped me was not the restaurant or the blazer. It was a photo from 6 months ago, taken at what looked like a backyard barbecue. Kelsey standing next to an older woman with silver-streaked hair and a familiar, rigid posture. The caption read, "Sunday cookout with Mrs. C. She makes the best potato salad in Virginia. And I will fight anyone who disagrees. Mrs. C. Judith Caldwell." I scrolled further, found a tagged photo of Kelsey and Judith at a charity luncheon, 2 months before the first Maison charge appeared. Then another, a birthday dinner. Kelsey's mother Sandra and Judith raising glasses of wine, and Kelsey at the end of the table, smiling at someone whose arm was cropped out of frame. The timeline built itself. Judith knew Sandra Morris from college sorority sisters. From what I could piece together, their daughters were different generations, but Judith had been mentioning Kelsey at family dinners for over a year. Sandra's daughter, so accomplished. Kelsey just finished her MBA, so driven. "You know, Grant, you should meet her sometime. She is doing wonderful things in marketing." I had heard these comments. I had been sitting at that table, pregnant with her grandchild, and I had heard Judith audition my replacement to my face. My mother-in-law did not just know about the affair, she built it. She introduced them. She encouraged it. And based on the timeline, she did it while I was still in my first trimester. Before I even started showing, I called Pat from the apartment. "Pat, I found out who she is." I was sitting on the floor because I had not bought chairs yet, my back against the wall, the crib visible through the bedroom doorway. Kelsey Morris. She is 25. Her mother is my mother-in-law's best friend from college. Silence. The kind of silence Pat uses when she is recalibrating. Judith introduced them, I said. She has been grooming this for months. There are photos of them together before the first restaurant charge. Then your mother-in-law is not just complicit. Pat said slowly. She is the architect of this entire arrangement. Funny word choice. Nothing funny about it, sweetheart. It changes our approach. I heard her pen tapping against her desk. If the mother arranged the affair and actively concealed it, that is relevant to the divorce proceedings. It demonstrates a pattern of family interference that a judge will consider when evaluating custody and support arrangements. A pause. But more importantly, does the girl know? Know what? Does she know he has a wife who is 8 months pregnant? I had not considered that. I went back to Kelsey's photos, her posts, her comments. Nothing about Grant by name. No couple photos, no relationship status. And in every picture at Maison, she was facing the camera, and he was cropped out or turned away, like someone who did not want to be documented. I do not think she does, I said. Then she is collateral, not an accomplice. And that means when the moment comes, she is going to be just as angry as you are. Another tap of the pen. That is useful. Useful how? Because right now you have evidence against your husband. But if Kelsey finds out she was lied to by him, by his mother, by her own mother's best friend, she becomes a witness, not a rival. The truth coming from your mouth, in front of Judith, will do more damage than any legal filing. I sat with that for a while. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator, which was the kind of sound you only hear when nothing else is competing for your attention. Grant's mother invited us to dinner on Sunday, I said. She wants us to meet someone. She wants to introduce Kelsey to you. To normalize her. To plant her in your life so that when the divorce happens, everyone says it was organic. Pat's voice sharpened. Do not miss that dinner, Sloane. I was not planning to. And bring your phone. Charged. With Kelsey's number saved, I looked at the crib through the doorway. Sturdy. It is already in my contacts, I said. Right between Pat Sweeney and Richmond General Hospital. Seems about right. I ironed my best maternity dress, the navy one with the white trim that Pat said made me look like someone who had her life together, which was generous, considering my life was currently distributed across 2 residences and a legal folder on a laptop Grant did not know existed. I put on lipstick for the first time in 3 weeks, brushed my hair until it cooperated, looked at myself in the bathroom mirror at the Churchill apartment, the one where no one had ever lied to me, and decided I looked like a woman who was about to do something she could not undo. I drove to Judith's house with my wedding ring on my left hand and my phone in my right, Kelsey Morris saved in the contacts, the call already queued. 1 tap, Grant opened the door. He looked surprised that I had dressed up. You look nice, he said, and the fact that it came out like a question told me everything about how long it had been since he actually looked at me. The house was cleaner than usual. Fresh flowers on the dining table, not roses, thank God, and the good china. The set Judith only used for people she was trying to impress. The ceramic angel from Savannah sat on the coffee table in the living room, freshly dusted. Something about that angel had always bothered me. It had this serene, tilted smile. The kind that looks peaceful until you realize it is not looking at you. It is looking past you. Judith came out of the kitchen in a blouse I had not seen before. A silk thing in cream that she wore like armor. Sloane, sweetheart, come in. You look. She paused just long enough for the silence to do the work. Rested. I sat down. Grant sat across from me. Judith brought out appetizers bruschetta on a ceramic platter she had bought at a home goods store 2 towns over. I knew this because she had told me twice where she bought it, both times in the same conversation. Judith catalogued her purchases the way I catalogued receipts. The difference was she wanted people to admire hers. I let the small talk run for 6 minutes. I counted. Then I set my fork down. Before we eat, I said, I want to ask you both something. Grant stopped chewing. Judith's hand paused over the bread basket. And I need you to be honest with me. The room had the particular quality of silence that happens when two people who share a secret realize the third person might know it. Grant looked at Judith. Judith looked at the bruschetta. Neither of them looked at me. Is there anything either of you wants to tell me? I kept my voice level. Not warm, not cold. The voice I use when I am presenting audit findings to a client who does not yet know how bad it is. Anything at all, Grant recovered first. He always did the salesman's reflex, filling silence with something. Like what? Babe? Like the truth. He laughed. A short, controlled sound. Not a real laugh, but the shape of one. He glanced at his mother and then back at me. I have no idea what you are talking about. Judith reached across the table and patted my hand. Her palm was cold and dry. Sweetheart, you are hormonal. Pregnancy does strange things. I remember when I was carrying Grant, I once accused his father of, well, never mind. The point is, your body is doing a lot right now. Maybe we should eat, and you will feel better. I know about the affair. The word sat in the center of the table like a dropped glass. Nobody moved to clean it up. Grant opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, looked at his mother, and Judith straightened her spine the way a building braces before a storm it thinks it can survive. If you are talking about those ridiculous charges, Judith said. Grant has already explained those to me. Business dinners, client entertainment. You, of all people, should understand write-offs. The hotel on Grove Avenue was not a write-off, Judith. Something shifted behind her eyes. Not guilt recognition. The recognition that I had done more homework than she expected. Take a look at yourself, she said. Her voice dropped into the register she used when she believed she was being generous with harsh truths. You are 8 months pregnant. You have let yourself go. A man has needs, Sloane. And if you cannot meet them, that is not his fault. That is yours. I did not move. Do not embarrass my family with accusations you cannot prove, she continued. If it were not for that baby, my son would have moved on months ago. And frankly, your family, your background was never a good fit. Your mother waitressed. Your father drove a truck. The Caldwells do not. The Caldwells do not what? She stopped. Not because she was done, because Grant put his hand on her arm. But he was not stopping her. He was adjusting, repositioning behind her the way he always did. Not next to me, never next to me, but behind his mother, where he could smirk without being the one who said the words. I looked at him. That smirk. He wore it like it was armor, but it was not. It was a reflex. The face of a man who had never once had to stand in front of anything, because there was always someone willing to stand in front of him. And I realized something I should have understood 6 weeks ago, the night I found the $47 charge. He was never going to choose me. Not because I was not enough, because choosing me would have required him to stand somewhere his mother was not, and he had never learned how to do that. He had never wanted to. I picked up my phone from the table. 1 tap. The speaker filled the room with a ringing tone. 1 ring. 2. Judith frowned. Grant's smirk flickered. Hello? Kelsey's voice was young and slightly confused. Background noise, a coffee shop, maybe? Or a television? Hi, Kelsey. This is Sloane, Grant's wife. I kept my voice steady. Audit voice. I am 8 months pregnant. And I am sitting in his mother's living room right now. I think there is something you should know. Silence. The kind that has weight, he told me. Kelsey's voice broke, just slightly, the fracture line in something that was still whole 5 seconds ago. He told me he was getting divorced. His mum said Mrs. Caldwell said you two had been separated for months. Judith's face lost its architecture, the rigid posture, the controlled expression, the cream silk blouse arranged just so all of it collapsed inward like a building whose load-bearing wall had been removed. She reached for the table edge. Mrs. Caldwell, Kelsey said, her voice hardening now. the confusion burning off and leaving something sharper underneath. You told me they were done. You introduced us. You said, "This is not the time," Judith said. You lied to me. You lied to me. And you lied to her. And I ended the call. Not because I had heard enough. Because the room had heard enough. Grant was standing now. The smirk was gone. In its place was something I had never seen on his face before, not guilt, not sadness, but the raw, unprocessed panic of a man who has just discovered that every wall he was leaning against has been quietly removed. If you were standing where I was standing, 8 months pregnant, listening to 3 people realize they had all been played by the same woman, the mother who built the lie, the husband who lived inside it, and the girl who never knew the walls were painted on, what would you have done? I will tell you what I did. I reached down and slid my wedding ring off my finger. It came off easier than I expected. I placed it on the coffee table, right next to the ceramic angel from Savannah. Gently, the way you put down something that stopped meaning what it was supposed to mean. I did not say a word. I picked up my purse, walked to the front door, and closed it behind me. In the car, I called Pat. It is done. File everything. Joint account freeze goes through in 15 minutes. Petition hits his email within the hour. Thank you, Pat. Go home, Sloan. The real one. I drove to Church Hill, parked, sat in the car for 2 minutes, watching the streetlights come on, my hands still steady, my breathing even. The baby kicked once, hard, right under my ribs, and I pressed my palm against the spot and held it there. 30 minutes later, I know, because Pat texted me the timestamp Grant's phone received a notification that the joint checking account had been frozen. 2 minutes after that, the divorce petition arrived in his email. He ran upstairs in Judith's house, opened the bedroom door at the old house, and found the closets half empty, the nursery stripped, the bookshelves bare, the photo albums gone. He ran out the front door and down the street in the dark, still wearing his dinner shoes. Calling my name over and over like repetition could undo what he had spent 11 weeks building. But I was 17 miles away, in a small apartment with east-facing windows, assembling a bottle warmer I had bought on sale, and I did not hear him. Not because of the distance, because I had already stopped listening. Grant called 17 times that night. I counted. Old habit. The first 3 came in rapid succession, one after the other. The way someone dials when they still believe the problem is a misunderstanding. By call number 7, the voicemails started. His voice moved through stages the way a stock price moves during a crash denial at the top, bargaining on the way down, anger when it hits the floor. Sloan, pick up. We need to talk about this. Babe, come on, this is crazy. Mum did not mean what she said. You know how she gets. You froze the account? Are you serious? I cannot even buy gas. Where are you? Where is all your stuff? The nursery is empty. What did you do? My lawyer is going to hear about this. Sloan. Please. I read every message the next morning, sitting at the kitchen counter in Church Hill with a bowl of oatmeal and my phone propped against a box I had not unpacked yet. I read them the way I read audit trails chronologically, dispassionately, noting what was said and what was missing. He cycled through denial, bargaining, anger, and more bargaining. He skipped guilt entirely. Not once in 17 calls and 11 text messages did he say the words, "I was wrong." The closest he came was "Mum did not mean it," which is not an apology. It is a redirect. By Tuesday, the ripple effects had reached Judith. Sandra Morris, her best friend of 30 years, Kelsey's mother, called Judith that morning. I know this because Pat heard it from Kelsey's own attorney, whom Kelsey had retained within 48 hours of our phone call, because it turned out Kelsey was considering her own legal options regarding what she described as fraudulent misrepresentation of marital status. Pat loved that phrase. She said it was the kind of thing that makes judges pay attention. Sandra did not take the call well. 30 years of friendship. And it ended in a 9-minute phone conversation. I do not know exactly what was said, but I know the outcome. Sandra told every mutual friend what Judith had done. By Wednesday, the story had spread through their social circle, the way financial contagion spreads through interconnected accounts. One node fails, and every connection to that node recalibrates. Judith Caldwell, who had spent decades curating her reputation as the matriarch of a respectable family, was now the woman who arranged her married son's affair, while his pregnant wife sat at her dinner table. That is not a narrative you recover from with a brunch invitation and a charitable donation. Grant, meanwhile, discovered that frozen accounts are remarkably educational. He could not access the joint savings. His credit card, the one I was an authorized user on, the one he had been using for Maison and the hotel and the roses, was now flagged. He had to ask Judith for money, which meant admitting to Judith that his wife had outmaneuvered both of them with a spreadsheet and a divorce attorney, and Judith was not in a generous mood because she was busy watching her social infrastructure collapse in real time. Thursday, Judith called me. I let it ring 4 times before answering, because 4 felt appropriate. Sloane. Her voice was stripped of its usual polish, no cream silk in the tone. This has gone far enough. This is a family matter, and it should stay. It stopped being a family matter when you made it a project, Judith. Silence. You introduced them. You told Kelsey we were separated. You built this from the ground up while I was carrying your grandchild. And now you want me to be quiet about it because it is inconvenient for your reputation. I was trying to protect my son. You were trying to replace me. She did not deny it. The silence confirmed, more than any admission would have. My lawyer will be in touch about the custody arrangement, I said. Do not call this number again. I hung up and sat very still for a long time. The apartment was quiet. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside, headlights sweeping across the ceiling in a slow arc, and the baby moved not a kick this time, but a slow, rolling shift, the kind that means she is settling into a new position. That night, I lay in bed on the second-hand mattress with a pillow wedged under my belly and another between my knees, and I cried, not for Grant, not for the marriage, for the version of my daughter's life that I had imagined before any of this started. The one where she came home from the hospital to a painted nursery in a house with 2 parents who looked at each other across the dinner table and meant it. For exactly 11 minutes, I considered going back. I counted, because counting is how I survive. 11 minutes of wondering if I had overreacted, if pregnancy hormones had clouded my judgment, if maybe I should have given him a chance to explain, if maybe Judith was right about one thing that I should have tried harder. Then the baby kicked. Hard. Right under my ribs. The same spot. Like she was punctuating a sentence I needed to finish. I wiped my face, turned on my side, and let the 11 minutes close, like a ledger I would never reopen. The next morning, Pat showed up at my door with a paper bag from the bakery on Main Street and 2 cups of coffee. 1 regular, 1 decaf. She handed me the decaf. I hate decaf, I said. I know. But your OB would hate me more if I brought you the real thing at 34 weeks. She sat down on my only chair, a folding thing I had borrowed from a neighbor, and looked around the apartment. Crib in the bedroom, boxes along the wall, a single framed photo on the kitchen counter. Me at 22, graduating from Virginia Commonwealth. My mother on one side and my father on the other, both of them crying because their daughter was the first person in the family to finish college. How are you holding up? Pat asked. I cried for 11 minutes last night. Only 11? She sipped her coffee. When I left my first husband, I cried for 3 weeks. But I also took the dog and the retirement fund, so I had company. She set the cup down. You are going to be fine. Sloane, you know how I know? Because I have a spreadsheet. Because you have a spreadsheet, a lease, a crib, and a daughter on the way who is going to grow up watching her mother solve problems instead of begging someone else to stop creating them. She looked at me over her glasses. That is not nothing. That is everything. I drank the decaf. It was terrible. But Pat was right about most things, and I was learning to let that be enough. 3 weeks later, I put on a dress that actually fit a dark green wrap dress I had bought online at 2 in the morning while the baby was doing her nightly gymnastics routine, and drove downtown to Pat's office to sign my name on a piece of paper that made me free. Grant was already there when I arrived. He sat in the conference room across from his lawyer, a man in a grey suit who looked like he had been hired that week and briefed that morning. Grant looked different, thinner. His shirt was wrinkled in a way that suggested he had ironed it himself, and discovered, perhaps for the first time, that ironing is harder than it looks when no one has been doing it for you. His eyes had the hollow quality of someone who has been sleeping on his mother's couch, which, according to Pat's sources, he had. I sat down across from him. Pat beside me, glasses on, legal pad ready. A pen that probably cost more than Grant's lawyer's entire briefcase. The documents were already laid out. 47 pages. I appreciated the number. The universe has a sense of arithmetic, even when people do not. The signing took 12 minutes. Most of it was procedural initials here, signatures there, dates in the margins. Grant's lawyer asked 2 clarifying questions that Pat answered before I could open my mouth. Both times in a tone that made it clear the answers were not negotiable. Grant signed everything without objection. His hand was steady, but his jaw was tight. The way a man holds his face together when he knows everyone in the room can see the cracks. When the last page was signed, his lawyer began collecting the documents. Grant sat still. He was looking at me, not at the papers, not at Pat, not at the door, at me. "Can we talk?" he said. "Just for a minute. Not about the legal stuff." Pat looked at me. I nodded. She stood, tapped his lawyer on the shoulder, and they both stepped into the hallway. Pat left the door open 3 inches. She was trusting me. Not him. Grant leaned forward. His hands were flat on the table, the way someone holds themselves down when they are afraid of what they might say if they let go. "I'm sorry," he said. 2 words. I searched his face for the thing I always searched for, the tell, the smirk, the sideways glance that meant he was performing instead of feeling. It was not there. For the first time in the months since I found the $47 charge, Grant was not standing behind anyone. He was sitting across from me, alone, with nothing between us but a stack of signed papers and whatever was left of 2 people who had once meant their vows. He meant it. I could tell the way you can tell when a number is accurate, not because someone told you, but because it balances against everything around it. But meaning it and deserving forgiveness are 2 different line items. And the balance did not add up. "I know," I said. And I did. But knowing someone is sorry is not the same as knowing they would not do it again. And I had run those numbers enough times to know the projection did not favor reinvestment. He looked down at his hands. "Will you tell her about me? When she is old enough, I will tell her the truth. All of it? The parts that matter." He nodded, stood up, picked up his copy of the documents and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. And for a moment I thought he was going to say something else, something practiced, something he had rehearsed on Judith's couch at 3 in the morning. But he did not. He just left. And the door clicked shut, with the quiet, unremarkable sound of something ending exactly the way it was supposed to. Pat came back in, sat down, looked at me. "You okay?" "I am okay." "Good." She pulled a paper bag from under the table. Inside, 2 coffees. She handed me one. I looked at the label. "This is decaf, Pat. 36 weeks, sweetheart. 2 more weeks, and you can have the real thing. Consider it motivation." I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed in a room that did not have boxes stacked along the wall. Judith did not come. Grant said she was not well. I did not ask what that meant. Some accounts you close without reconciling, because the discrepancy is not your problem anymore. 5 weeks later, my daughter was born at Richmond General at 6:14 in the morning on a Tuesday. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. She had my nose and a grip strong enough to close around my index finger and not let go, which I decided was a personality trait. Pat sent flowers. Not roses, sunflowers. The card said, "Welcome to the world, little one. Your mother is the most thorough person I have ever met, and I have audited 3 Fortune 500 companies. P.S. My mother drove up from Norfolk and stayed for 2 weeks. She slept on the couch without complaining, made soup every day, and held the baby while I took showers that lasted longer than 6 minutes for the first time in months. My father called every evening at exactly 7:15 and asked the same 3 questions. How is the baby? How is my girl? Did you eat? He did not ask about Grant. He did not need to. My parents understood exits. They had spent their whole lives building things with their hands, and they knew the difference between a structure worth saving and one that needed to come down. On a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after the delivery, I sat on the floor of my apartment with the baby asleep in the crib and a cup of coffee in my hands. Real coffee, not decaf. The apartment was small. The coffee was not great. The crib took up most of the bedroom. And nobody in these rooms had ever lied to me. That was enough. That was more than enough. They told me I was not enough. My mother-in-law said it to my face while I stood in her living room carrying her grandchild. My husband confirmed it with his silence and his smirk and his 11 weeks of restaurant receipts. So, I believed them. I believed them all the way to the bank, to the lease office, to the lawyer, and to a life where I did not need their permission to know my own worth. When someone tells you that you are not enough, believe them, not because they are right, because they have just told you exactly how small their world is, and you were never meant to fit inside it. So here is what I want to leave you with. If someone in your life has been telling you with their words, with their silence, with that smirk they think you do not see that you are not enough, when was the last time you stopped and asked yourself, enough for what? Enough for them? Or enough for you? Because those are 2 very different numbers, and only one of them matters.